most forms of media, gods are revered as higher beings. They're supposed to be bigger, better, and brighter than us feeble mortals. But did you notice one specific word I said in that sentence? Supposed. Today, we continue the Archons Only series for Genshin Impact, so we can truly find out if these gods are better than the rest.
I'm better! I am better!
We started with Venti almost a year ago, but now we're going through our twink death and becoming a man with Zhongli. Here are the rules. We can only use Zhongli, and all weapons are allowed, including 5 stars. But for this run, we are adding another rule. Typically for character-only runs, if the subject of the video has some form of self-sustain, I make sure to include no healing food. Since I think it's fair to have the dynamic of a character with no healing be allowed to eat food, while a character with healing cannot eat food. But since Zhongli is our little special boy, I changed up the stipulation to make it to where he can only heal from the Statue of the Seven. You will come to understand why I added this. Now that we've got that covered, let's see if we can beat Genshin Impact only using Zhongli.
Like a page from the fairy tales you knew. This is proof that the end has come to you. You're on an endless journey filled with doubt. Go find the page and tear it out. In the land that I seen some time ago, evil lurked as we see the shadows grow. But then a hero saved us on that night. The day they brought us back into the light.
We start our journey back in 2023 to a much simpler time. Fontaine had just come out, and in the second half of the 4.0 cycle, Zhongli was on banner alongside Sayu, Fremine, and Noelle. You might be thinking, MistahFeet, you're so funny and attractive, but you waited this long to do the Zhongli account? Well, yes and no. A couple of months prior to Fontaine, I did the No Stamina Challenge, where the idea was presented to me to do the No Walking Challenge. And upon seeing this banner, I thought that this was the perfect cast of characters for that challenge. We have 2 shield characters and someone with movement that wouldn't qualify as walking. So I made this account, dropped $100, and managed to get everyone on the banner, then I waited. But when the time came around to do no walking, I figured that being in a challenge like that with 2 indestructible shields and a taxi wouldn't be the best content for what's supposed to be a pretty difficult run. So I decided to push this account back to the Zhongli Only challenge, which is why I don't have the summons for this video, because that original video file was named Walking 1, and I accidentally deleted it when I deleted all of my no walking recordings. That wraps up the lore for this account, so let's get into the challenge. After we give Zhongli one of his best in-slot weapons, yes, it's a 3-star, we begin our run at Amber's Domain. Starting this off, we get to see a very rare instance of Zhongli taking damage. If you hate Zhongli, savor this moment because there really is not a lot of them. Normally for these runs, I have to spend about 5 minutes of my life trying to climb a rock, but Zhongli is able to avoid this problem thanks to his pillar, which allowed us to clear our first temple and also Dono Wall Amber. Our pillar continued to make Act 1 easier because it allowed us to fly over Kaya's pool, and even though we couldn't make the skip for Lisa's temple, we got on the tip of Zhongli's massive rod to help us complete the first act in a pretty respectable time. Now we're going to work up to AR 10, and for this part, I usually talk about what's good and bad for a character, but for the first time ever, I think we found a character that has no flaws. Jean had downsides to certain abilities, but there is nothing bad about Zhongli. Literally everything about this character is great, or at its worst, mediocre. For exploring, we're tall, so that makes us the fastest in the game. We can use the pillar to get even higher and make climbing easier. It can activate totems and even platforms, and mining is a complete joke. So there's no issues here. Combat. Our damage isn't great at the moment. Neither our normal attacks or skill do good damage, but it's passable. So now I'm like, finally, something this character isn't good at. But then I ult and everything is dead. And it's not like this ult is hard to get. It has 40 cost.
Everybody, take cover!
Alright, now we got the sustain. Zhongli has kind of been power crept by today's cast, but the one thing this character has always had going for him is his shield. This might just be one of the dumbest things I've seen in any video game period, which is saying something because I've played Enigma of Sepia. If you hold Zhongli's skill, he creates a geo pillar from the ground that does damage, shreds defense, continues to deal damage around the object, and gives the player a massive shield. This shield is so strong. I probably don't even have to say anything to you about it because this is Zhongli. He is known as the shield guy. You hold E and the enemies give up and you win the game. Playing Zhongli is like being a kid again. You get to do what you want while everyone else around you has to suffer the consequences of your actions because they don't want to hurt your feelings. Or in this case, they just can't hurt you, period. You can just do whatever you want with this character. He does everything. Normally, being a Geo character is something that I would consider a negative for characters, but Zhongli applies it so often that it's kind of decent, and he has his own status condition that makes it so enemies cannot move. Was that really necessary? And like, why am I getting so worked up over using a good character? And it's because he's too good.
The unkillable Demon King!
I felt like I was actively getting worse at not only Genshin, but gaming in general. This character is the sin of sloth. He preys on your ineptitude. There is no thought behind a Zhongli player's head. I felt my IQ drop 20 points playing this character. I felt my reflexes get slower. He made me feel old, and I'm only 23. I'm not Unk.
Beat that, Gramps.
Gramps? I'm in my 20s.
You ever see those scenes in a show where someone is like, quote, playing a game and they're just mashing buttons on a controller? They're playing Zhongli, like straight up. That's all they're doing because that's what this character allows. And I shake my fist at him for that because what else can I do? I can't fucking hurt him. This concludes my analysis of Zhongli. And honestly, this is just the curse of immortality in a nutshell. Forget about what Dainsleif has to deal with. At least he can still feel pain. Zhongli for real just stands there. After 2 hours of farming, we ascended Zhongli, giving us a new passive that strengthens our shield. Just let me die. Just let me feel pain. Please. I need to feel something. Zhongli started Act 2 after 3.5 hours, and it's just kind of an odd feeling to know that I'm AR 18 at this point, and we already have 10k HP. Just to put this into perspective, I spent 42 hours doing Lisa only, and her highest HP was 7k. The first enemy in our way was the Eye of the Storm, who was our biggest challenge so far. Does that mean it was difficult? Absolutely not, but it meant that it did take us slightly longer than usual. Because our Black Tassel is mainly here to help with the shields, that means our damage is pretty lacking against basically every enemy that isn't a slime. We're literally using a weapon that is more powerful depending on the race we're fighting against. And that's kind of insane to think about if we're being honest. Like, just imagine in real life if there was a weapon that did more damage against a certain group of people.
You know who I'm talking about.
Excuse me?
Just wrapping up
You
the
said
episode,
something. You said something about a certain group of people. What?
Oh, it was a joke. It was a
which
joke.
group are you talking
It was a
about?
joke, but it didn't land as much as I thought.
Next, we had the Fatui's secret base, where Zhongli just casually shrugs off falling into lava, and we meet the mini-boss. I'm only bringing this up for 2 reasons. The first is to illustrate why this character frustrates me, because I just look like an idiot, and I can get away with it. Bro goes invisible, and I just use Big Rock, and I see him now. This has got to be the most frustrating character to fight from an enemy's perspective. The second reason is because this enemy is actually voiced by Keith Silverstein, aka the English voice actor of Gabriel from Miraculous Ladybug.
Adrian. No.
And he's also the voice actor of Zhongli, so we're kind of like fighting our twin, you know, twinning.
Yora's not going to tolerate this kind of interference in our affairs.
Ending Act 2, our Black Tassel continues its ethnic cleansing, while Zhongli dunks on the final Abyss Mage to let us begin the finale. Dvalin was interesting to Zhongli for a couple of reasons. 2 archons chilling in the hot tub, 5 feet apart because they're not gay. The first being that I actually did the opening section hitless on my first try. Is this what PTSD feels like? And the second being that Zhongli took the longest time out of any character to do this fight. It took Zhongli 4 shield breaks to defeat Dvalin, and prior to this, the most it's taken a character was 3. So this is actually pretty bad. Our only good form of damage here is the burst, which can't be easily obtained because geoconstructs are weird in boss fights. Does this mean Dvalin put up a good fight? Not really, because we still didn't get hit. This was just a war of attrition, and not much can really be done to Zhongli when it comes to those. As we approach the ending cutscene for Mondstadt, I encountered an extremely weird bug. For some reason, Diluc's voice line where he talks about getting crushed by a meteorite.
I'd prefer to be crushed to death by a meteorite.
I came back and
This is very odd because this voice line is supposed to play at the end of Act 2, nearly an hour before this happened. So I have no idea how this came to be, but Hoyoverse, since I know you're watching now, as an up-and-coming, new, inexperienced Genshin Impact player, this voice line ruined my experience with the story, so I would like some compensation. Zhongli finished Mondstadt at the 5-hour point, which puts him behind Venti so far in the rankings time-wise. And for this series, I am going to be taking into account how long it took these archons to complete their own respective nations to see if they are truly worthy of being called the god of their land. And so far, Venti is holding on to that title for Mondstadt, so let's see if Zhongli is the true god of Liyue. Act 1 of Liyue from a story perspective is a little funny, given that Rex Lapis was assassinated at the rite of Dissension, and seeing how we are playing as the Geo Archon right in front of his Adepti as they are panicking, it's a little amusing, especially since Xiao is recreating this FNAF meme, but for Morax. Now, from a gameplay perspective, we got to see the full spectrum for Zhongli, and I'm not talking about autism. We got to see the lows of 34 damage and the highs of 1.4k damage, while also making a skip in a domain and one-shotting every rock on the mountain because he is the GOAT at mining.
He was special.
Rex Lapis. Assassinated. At the rate of suspension!
When it came to the Ruin Hunter, it kind of dawned on me while looking back at this footage, the idea that the Traveler's abilities are just worse versions of the Archon's kit. Most people are fairly familiar with this concept.
Hey, y'all, come look at this.
And seeing at how Zhongli's shield took so much damage and didn't break, it really made me upset thinking about how Geo Traveler could have gotten a shield, but didn't.
Why does it do 3,000 damage? I'm in world level 1!
All he got was just a worse version of Zhongli's meteors. We have Zhongli shield at home, and it's just crystallized. With Act 1 finished, I decided to make my way over to Gimel so we could get some materials for Zhongli's Ascension. Geohypostasis is one of the bosses of all time. I think it's safe to say that this boss is nobody's favorite, nor is it anyone's least favorite. It just kind of exists and is mildly frustrating at times because it's always playing floor is lava extreme difficulty. But that's for normal playthroughs. What is it like for Zhongli? It's more of the standard Zhongli playstyle. But this time, our health skill is made even better because it half healths the pillars when we use it. Zhongli's normals still don't do much damage, which meant that I had to resort to the new strategy of using charge attacks. So I got to hear a lot of this. The best part about these fights is the final section because Zhongli's able to do held skill into burst to just immediately win, meaning we never have to worry about the boss recovering health. With our new pillars obtained, we brought Zhongli up to level 50 and bombed our way through the Ascension domain so we could start Leeway Act 2. So, fun fact, Zhongli is over 6,000 years old. And another fun fact is that he cannot cook. What is Unk doing here? Speaking of fun facts, gamers, it's time for another episode of Did You Know Gaming. Gamers, did you know that if you do Zhongli's normal attack sequence and mash the skill button on the last hit, the pillar will catch the enemies falling and make them take fall damage? This sequence will always work on smaller enemies. That's all for today, but don't forget to subscribe to Did You Know Gaming. The next obstacle in our path would be Madam Ping's teapot. The inside of this domain is comprised entirely of slimes, so our black tassel would be extremely helpful here if I was still using it. Yeah, I swapped out the best in slot for the halberd, with the sole reasoning behind that being, I just want to feel something, man. Our shield is too strong. Give me less health. I need to know I'm still alive. Zhongli then gets to reprimand some treasure hoarders by casting Supernova. And we finished off the second act. Beginning Act 3, Leeway takes us to the top of the mountains to activate an Anemo fan. I tried my hardest to get this to work normally with Zhongli, but the floating island is just a little too far out. And it also doesn't help that Zhongli doesn't know how to aim his rod. Usually if you get on a tree, you can try and place down constructs because most constructs are able to be placed on standable ground. But since we can't aim, we can't really place it here. But even then, if I'm looking at this with my iconic protractor, I just don't think this is a good enough angle to make it. So Sayu, go kick this thing. We then meet Zhongli by the river so he can sing to some flowers.
We are Charlie Kirk, we carry the flame.
The conclusion of Leeway sees the alternate ending of this Archon quest. So originally, Child's plan was to summon Osile and then use that attack to bring out the real Geo Archon, but this doesn't happen because the city saves the day. Sorry for spoiling the Leeway story in 2025, but now we get to see what happens when the Geo Archon shows up, and I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty fucking funny. So the Child fight is a complete joke. The shield dominates him, and we're even able to use our Geo construct, which is not always available for boss fights. The ship of Chili is getting turned on his head because Zhongli is clearly on top of things here. Now we get to see the second half of the finale, which is defending the city. And honestly, yeah, Zhongli could have done it.
Take action regarding that individual.
Relax, I'll handle it.
I am the angry pumpkin.
Now, granted, the shield only works for Zhongli since we have no party members here, but I do have a theory that if Zhongli could just multiply himself across the city, then he could give the shield to everyone in the city and they would have been fine. Aside from this like one attack that goes to the shields, but just ignore that. You've seen it here first, folks. This is the alternate ending for Leeway's storyline. Zhongli saves the day and proves to everyone that God is indeed real and needed to have a thriving society.
Oh.
Merry Christmas, everyone!
Leading us to beating Act 3 after a total runtime of 11 hours and 30 minutes, but let's be more specific and take a look at the Leeway runtime. It took Zhongli specifically 5 hours, 56 minutes, and 49 seconds to beat Leeway, which does put him faster than Venti's Leeway time of 6 hours and 25 minutes, meaning that Zhongli is indeed the true Archon of Leeway. Unk still got it. The next 3 quests we did highlighted a problem that was slowly growing with Zhongli. Zhongli's sustain was still strong, there's nothing to worry about there. In his elemental application, plus the of petrification did a lot for the character's fights against abyss shields, but the consistent underlying issue was our normal attack damage. It wasn't getting that much better even after using an attack-based build with the halberd. So I decided to build a new weapon, the Crescent Pike, which is not one of Zhongli's best in slots, but I don't care. I stopped caring a long time ago about my own health. I just want damage. With our new weapon, we continued our challenge all the way over to the beaches of Inazuma, where the pike proved its worth by getting us a damage number of 67. 67! 67! Unk still got it!
Down low. Down low.
In heaven.
In heaven. 6, 7.
Our next stop was the prison that I'm like 90% sure is smaller than the radius of our burst. So it's really odd seeing our burst not only work in this building, but also the fact that no one seems to care that a guy is befalling planets in a closed building. I get that these guys work for the Shogun, but I gotta be honest, if I saw a guy summoning meteor strikes, oh my god, I would have to rethink my faith when I compare it to my god just being able to make lightning. Inazuma Act 2 presented Unk with the archery demonstration, and given that I've tried to do this before with geoconstructs,
And as soon as I put down the perfect spots, this happens. Do you see this shit? You can't make this up!
I knew going into this that Zhongli probably wouldn't be able to do this. And I was right. If we were able to do the Zhongli multiplication strategy that I mentioned in Leeway, then I'm sure that the Zhongli army could potentially throw rocks at all the blue targets, but unfortunately, we don't live in that timeline. We live in this one. Within the final act of Inazuma, Zhongli's next obstacle was the Electro Pillars, which he also couldn't do. I understand that a Geo Pillar wouldn't be able to do something to an Electro device, but if you're telling me that a meteor would also do nothing to a glorified power generator?
Come on, dude, be honest, come on.
It should at least remove this thing from the map. But instead, Ling Li was reunited from the Lisa Only video, which brought out the Electro Biggie Churl, who just so happens to be their biggest supporter.
Let's act out my fan fiction. I'll pick something family friendly. No, not that one. Oh, definitely not that one.
This fan wouldn't give them the personal space though, which led to Zhongli dropping a burst for a new damage high of 5k. The Delusion Factory was one of the better experiences for Zhongli. Given that we are a Geo character, we don't really have the best time dealing with other elemental shields. But, to I'm sure no one's surprised anymore, Zhongli does this pretty well. Our Crescent Pike gives us decent damage, and with our burst, we get an extra 2 seconds to where the enemies cannot move. By making these enemies essentially freeze, we delay their shields and just get free damage. Not only that, but this burst also does good damage to these enemies, even when they have their shields up. The only thing I don't understand is how this guy took the damage, but blocked being petrified by just putting his hands up. If only the dinosaurs knew how to do that, then we'd still get to see a Brachiosaurus. You guys would probably be scared to see one out in the public, but I know that they're herbivores, so I'd be fine. We're now left with 2 bosses for Inazuma, with Senor being the first one. So you know how I mentioned in the Dvalin section that I did it hitless? That basically happened here again with Senora. Our shield is so much stronger than what we had to use for the hitless run. It's not even close. It is comical how much easier it is to do this. The only thing to look out for is the weather, since it goes through shields. You ever wear a fur coat near a volcano? Yeah, it's easy to start feeling the heat even when you got protection. This was our only bit of damage for this fight. And honestly, let's just take a look back at this video, and I want you to look at my health. When was the last time my health went under 50%, aside from the attack that Osile forces you to take? Like, honestly, it's ridiculous, and this doesn't even change with the almighty Raiden Shogun. We just straight up tanked her nuke like nothing even happened. This character is so stupid.
The iPhone was out in the 90s and the 80s.
You'll see animations of Zhongli during fights with other archons and enemies, but they make it look 100 times cooler, because in reality, it just looks like this. They're just waving shit around, and we win! With one last conversation talking to Zhongli's pillar, we ended Inazuma in just under 19 hours, putting Zhongli 30 minutes ahead of Venti's total run and making him the current god of Inazuma. I don't even know what could stop him at this point, because even with the Chasm quest, no one was able to hurt him, not even the Abyss Heralds. He just puts his shield up and keeps attacking. He's so brainless. It's brainless. It's mindless. It's our endless struggle with immortality is only made worse with AR-35 because we get to ascend our Zhongli to level 70, which gives us a new passive that increases our damage based on our max HP. Wow. So now they want us to build HP to do more damage. Look, and now we got a new damage high of 11k. Oops, no, it's actually 13k, which is the most damage that's ever been done by a character. And we're already in Sumeru at just 20 hours, and nothing is slowing us down anytime soon. Is this even a real character? Do we even exist outside of the shield? Are we even real? What is this? Is there such thing as a life outside of the Jade Shield. There has to be something to prove that we are real.
Mother, what is it?
Yes, we finally came across some enemies that can hurt us. Is it a lot of damage? No, but it's just enough of a reminder that we still exist. Within Act 4, our struggle of being too good at everything continues with all of the enemies we fought. We didn't even take any damage throughout the entire quest. The biggest obstacle we had, though, came from the Dendro pillars. Why? Because we couldn't just use a Dendro character. Nope, this 9,000-year-old man still does puzzles the old-fashioned way. Sumeru, Act 5. Most of the enemies in this act are Fatui, which means that Zhongli is mainly going to be against elemental shields, and that's not really his strong suit. So surely this means we might have some problems here, right? No, because I accidentally found out a trick for Zhongli. If you do Zhongli's full normal attack sequence, during specifically 2 of the moves in this attack string, there is a chance to stagger an enemy back a little bit. Additionally, when we use our tap skill, there is also a chance to stagger enemies for a little bit. And when the enemies are staggered like this, they cannot do any moves, including the ones when they put their shield up. And since our tap skill is on a 3-second cooldown, we can basically loop these Fatui agents with this combo infinitely until they die. Yes, I'm not joking. This worked for almost all of the Fatui enemies that I had to fight in this quest. And our skill even remains useful for exploration because we can just skip 2 whole parts of the factory. Please, give this character an actual problem.
Come!
Okay, so now we have somewhat of a problem, and it's not ED. Scaramouche has a nuke button that can only be stopped by breaking 4 devices. Surprisingly, Zhongli can only destroy 1 of them. I'm saying surprisingly because he could basically do near everything else, but this meteor isn't big enough to hit all 4 targets. Or it's just that these turrets are above the ground, which is apparently another way to dodge meteor strikes, I guess. The final act of Sumeru brought the return of slimes, and though the black tassel is long gone by now, we still carried on its will to eliminate the opposition. But we still can't figure out how to cook. Come on, Unk. That doesn't really matter anyway, because Zhongli is still just so far ahead of Venti as he ends Sumeru near the 28-hour point, while also making him the current archon of Sumeru. So now Zhongli is the god of 3 nations. Let's just go to Fontaine and see how this goes. Beginning Fontaine, we get to see the normal teleporting Hydrogonus strategy we've come accustomed to, and we also bear witness to the stun lock strategy working on the Fontaine mechas. This strategy genuinely feels like cheating. It's cheating! I don't even think this is fair. Is stun locking even the correct term to use for these things? They're robots, so it seems like spring locking is like the more accurate term for this. Now we've made it to Fontaine Act 5, where Zhongli gets a new damage high of 17k. Yeah, I think we can just fast forward parts of this and give him the crown, because this is just getting ridiculous at this point.
Yo, this shit ridiculous, yo.
The only thing I can really talk about regarding the end of Fontaine is the crowd lector, because he at least made us feel something. I know that I've basically slammed the gas since the beginning of Sumeru, but I really need you guys to understand how hard it is for me to talk about this run. The gameplay is just...
Gather, solidify, stabilize, solidify, stabilize.
And when we have a shield that scales from our 22k HP, it's hard for me to hype up a fight because they can't hurt Zhongli, let alone this ginormous fucking shield. Will Natlan be any different? I don't know, but I sure hope so. Natlan has my favorite opening to any region in this challenge, simply because we get to see Kachina's disappointment towards Geo right in front of the god of Geo. Imagine denying God's gift in front of his existence.
I want you to have it.
I don't really want this.
Towards the end of Act 1, I thought that we had a chance to find something that Zhongli would struggle with, that being the Abyssal Pylons, because our elemental application is kinda slow, so we might have to actually look out for the enemies. I thought this as I completely forgot that by summoning our pillar, we also get our ginormous shield. So the gameplay just looks like this. Let's go! Yes! Very exciting, as you can tell by my reaction.
Yes! Yes! Remember my f***ing name! Remember the f***ing name!
Let's just go ahead and skip to Act 4 of Natlan, because the other battles, they just aren't worthy of being discussed. They add nothing.
Look how small you are! How worthless you are!
However, the 4th quest shows us that death is possible, because one enemy was able to get us put under half health. So maybe, just maybe, the war will give us a worthy challenge. But unfortunately for me, there was none. We're talking about a survivor of the Archon War. So why would this little conflict in Natlan cause any problems? I mean, seriously, we did take some damage. We got to 8k HP, which is the lowest HP we've ever been at relative to our max HP, and that's still higher than Lisa's. These abyssal enemies were our best chance at giving us a satisfying fight because they had attacks that could damage their shields, but it still wasn't enough. We made it through the entire war, the entire nation, no, the entire game without dying a single time. Not even close. In total, the Natlan War had 1,961 deaths, which could have been prevented with the multiplication Zhongli strategy, but and we finished Natlan after 46 hours, 27 minute wait. We still have another quest that we can do. Natlan Act 6, aka the Dane one. This is our last chance. Maybe, just maybe, things will be different here. Our first battles are against plenty of abyssal enemies. We have Seat Lolly, but she's not really doing anything here, TBH, because she legally can't. The first battle ended with Zhongli taking 6k HP. The color is starting to come back into our lives, because it seems like this quest could actually be a challenge. For the next fight, we have to protect Diradith, which also included more abyssal enemies that brought us to an even lower health. And as we started the assault on the Abyss Order stronghold, I started to think there was a chance for something amazing here. But as I slowly kept going, my hopes started to dwindle because while we did have to fight the first two groups of enemies, the rest of this was just totems, and we didn't have to kill the enemies surrounding them. So it was literally just a repeat of the abyssal pylons from earlier, waiting, then running past all the enemies. This was the entire challenge in a nutshell. Shield and wait. And I was tired of it. I was so tired of it. Which is why it came to be such a great shock to me when I realized that I couldn't run past the last group of enemies. We had to fight 3 Abyss Mages and 2 Abyss Heralds, all in this one area. I figured that our shield would just tank through everything, so I pressed onwards. But to my surprise, it actually broke. My shield broke, and not only did it break, but we were taking damage. Lots of it, actually. So much so that we actually died.
Rex Lapis. Assassinated?
I had planned out a bit to where I would play this voice line every time I died in this challenge, but as you can see, that never occurred until now. And not just one time, but 3 times.
Rex Lapis. Assassinated?
It actually happened. I have to actually play the game now. I have to actually think. I have to lean forward in my chair. I have to come up with a strategy. So originally, I tried to go after the Electro Abyss Mage first, but I quickly realized it wasn't worth it because he loves to do his Electro Ring attack, and that breaks our shield, so it just leads to me dying. Yes, there was a move that could actually break the shield consistently. I then shifted my priority over to the Cryo Mage. This was done because we can actually be frozen with our shields up. So as long as we get rid of one cryo enemy, our chances of getting frozen drastically go down. Now, in terms of dealing with the shields themselves, my plan was to just use the hold skill to start so we could get the pillar and our Jade shield up. Then we just run around and wait for openings to use our tap skill since it has a short cooldown and periodically does damage around it. Once a shield goes down, we use our burst so that way we can not only get some big damage on the mage, but so that we can also freeze the other enemies in place while we set up. After the Cryo Mage, I decided to go for the Electro one since it does the most damage out of everyone here. Now we were down to 3 enemies with only 2k HP left. I kept the Hydra one as the last mage because its attacks aren't too great. Yes, the bubble move is extremely frustrating, but because of our pillar, we don't have to deal with it since the bubble pops if it comes into contact with it. We used our pillar to slowly chip away at the shield's health until we were finally able to defeat the mage, which left us with 2 Abyss Heralds remaining. These 2 were the easiest for me to deal with, and since I didn't have to worry about 3 mages shooting projectiles at me, I knew that we could just play this safe with our shield pillar and win this. The Cryolector was the first one to go since his shield had a small weakness to Geo, which meant that he was the easier pimple to pop. And as for the Hydro Herald, this was a chance for me to play more aggressive since I was not only protected by the Jade shield, but by Hydro Crystallized shields, so I knew that he could not do any damage to us. After a nearly 15-minute grueling battle that finally gave us a satisfying challenge, we were sadly finished with Natlan. And after 48 hours, 12 minutes, and 50 seconds, we beat Genshin Impact only using Zhongli. Aside from the last area, this challenge was one of the easiest things I've ever done. The enemies had to work like 10 times as hard as I did just to break my shield, and that's before they can even get to this big-ass health bar. I know that it might seem odd that I was complaining about using such an insanely strong character, but you have to recognize that when a character like this is so good and so strong, it makes the run boring. And it's worse than using a bad character when it comes to making content in that regard. Does this mean I would rather play as Mona? No.
This is stupid.
I'm saying that a run like Mona has more for me to talk about, because there's not much for me to say about Zhongli since it's just
gather, solidify, stabilize, solidify, stabilize, gather, solidify.
But even though he's the easiest character, let's go to the ratings to see if he is statistically the best one yet. For damage, I'll give Zhongli a 4. This is mainly carried by his burst and second ascension passive. His normal attacks and skill are fairly mediocre, but his ult always remained a strong move that had a low energy cost, and his damage only started to increase as the challenge went on. Exploration, I'll give Zhongli another 4. He's tall, so he has the fastest movement speed, and the pillar is useful for when we have to climb up things. Plus, he's the GOAT when it comes to mining. He's got an easy 4. Sustain, Zhongli gets a 5. He has no healing in his kit, but he doesn't need it because of how strong this shield is. Literally, just watch this video again and look at the health bar. I'm not saying this so I get more money, just look. He easily gets a 5. Bosses. I was gonna go with a 3, but I think I'm gonna bump it up to a 4. Zhongli's low normal attack damage was noticeable during some fights, and the fact that his construct can't stay on the ground during some arenas is definitely annoying. But it's really hard to say those things matter that much when you have a shield that lowers their defense and makes you Yes, the bosses can't get petrified, but the meteor still hits pretty hard, so I think a 4 fits with this. Lastly, we have ability/utility, and I'll give Zhongli a 5. In a solo run, this kid is unfair. Just straight up. An unkillable shield that scales off HP, a passive that increases damage based on HP, a defense shred, and an ult that hits like a truck and provides its own unique CC. This might be one of the best and most bloated kits for a solo character that I've seen so far. Overall, Zhongli gets a 22 out of 25, giving him an A, beating out Venti's score and tying him with Bennett and Jean for the highest overall grade, while ending with an unbuffed damage high of 17k and a buff damage high of 7.8k, making Zhongli the record holder for the highest unbuffed damage and the most damage ever done by a solo character, period. Zhongli's time is also very impressive, but he did get a slower time compared to Venti when it came to completing Natlan Act 5, leaving Venti as the Archon of Natlan. And before we fully wrap up things here, it wouldn't be a proper Zhongli video without
Osmanthus wine tastes the same as I remember.
So I counted all of the times I had to hear that line in this challenge, which was a total of 39 times. I know that's probably much less than what you guys were expecting, but I had to really stay on the move when doing this challenge because I was under the impression that I needed to get this done earlier than I had thought, which is why I didn't include Nod Cry because I didn't think I would have the time for it. But the original sponsor for this video fell through last minute, which is why this video just covers Natlan. So far, here is where the current Archon rankings stand, and it seems that for these two Genshin 1.0 cycle demons, the next god that they will have to contend with is
the almighty Raiden Shogun and the Muso no Hitotachi.
Tell me why.